What's up, everybody? Excited. Got the third Nebraska coach on. Super pumped to sit down, have the conversation. Sam Scherwinski at Nebraska. Pumped to see where this conversation goes. But as always, as we open up, wild or funny story, what you got for everybody?
First off, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Super excited to do this podcast with you. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, a crazy wild story. So my first ever college meet coaching, I was originally with UW Lacrosse, and we were doing a travel meet to Air Force. And sure enough, we get to the airport, get into our rental cars. We're on the side of the road doing 80 bumper to bumper with everybody. And this is my first time doing this with any
Yeah.
college athletes before. So, just a little nervous, wanted to make sure that I was doing all the things I was supposed to be doing. And my minivan broke down on the side of the highway,
Uh,
and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fix a car or anything. So had to just kind of pull off to the side of the road, and it was a whole mess and kind of threw our whole trip for a loop. But it was definitely a learning experience for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. Like welcome to the coaching life and in being in charge. Like, wait, I'm an adult now. Like I gotta actually like take care of people.
Exactly. Yeah, it was
Uh,
it was fun for sure.
Cool, man. Well, I guess that's always like a good segue is like again, like for me, is a lot of these like episodes and conversations is just to like share stories and like learn. And I think like even for like for me personally is like kind of curious of like your journey, your timeline, and like what was the like natural draw to like get into coaching? Did you always know coaching was going to be a thing, or was it like just kind of an opportunity that like fell into your lap and you were like, oh damn, I'm kind of good at this. Maybe I can make a career out of it. But how did it start to like leading up to like where you are now?
Yeah, so my path has kind of gone all which ways. So originally I was a gymnast myself. I did gymnastics all the way through high school. Started to look into college and see if that was a path that I wanted to go down, and had to have some shoulder surgery. So that
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
took me out of doing the sport myself. But was coaching little kid classes kind of like as I was growing older. And so I started coaching boys at like a lower level, started to work into team. So that's kind of how I got into like the club world. So originally I was just in men's gymnastics. And then, you know, as it all kind of evolves, started coaching into some of the more rec side for girls gymnastics as well. And my sister did gymnastics with me growing up, so my household was very, very gymnastics based. So kind of was in the world on both sides of it pretty much my entire life. And then as I was looking into going into college, I had some connections to UW Lacrosse and the gymnastics program there. So was able to, as I started college, I was able to take on like a volunteer role.
Mhm.
And so the summer going into college, I started coaching optionals for women's, and kind of got my feet wet in that regard. And learned it under a bunch of different coaches, started doing a
Yeah.
bunch of different camps. And so kind of did that path all the way through my undergrad experience, bouncing from volunteer assistant to actual assistant. And I lived in lacrosse for about 5 years, kind of working with the team and learning through a variety of people and working at some different clubs as well, kind of along that journey. And um, after I finished my bachelor's degree, went on to get my master's degree through West Virginia. So I did that into sport coaching.
Wait, you went to WVU?
So at the time it was during COVID, so it was all online. So I was living in lacrosse while I was kind of going through that path.
Oh.
Yep. So originally my bachelor's degree, I did that in marketing. So I loved coaching, and I didn't really know like what path I was going to go down. So I was
Yeah.
just kind of doing college coaching and going to camps through the summer, like I said, and just kept learning and networking, meeting all the right people. And I just really fell in love with it. So that's kind of what made me want to push and do a master's degree. And I did that in sport coaching. So felt like this was kind of the career path that I wanted to go down. And uh, ended up moving out to St. Louis, and I coached at Lindenwood University for a couple of years. And yeah, it's after this past season and the what kind of transpired there, I ended up being the new assistant at Nebraska. So that's kind of where I've landed, and I've been here for about a month now. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think going back to your club experience, how is that? Obviously, like I guess from two different angles or two different buckets, like how has that helped you kind of like get to the position like you are now? Because like I mean, like understanding and teaching like literal kids, right? Like it takes a different, it makes you learn to like break things down differently than when you're talking to like an 18, 19, 20-year old, right? And so I think like how from like a technical standpoint has that like helped shape and mold you and kind of like benefited you into like what like coaching now, and then also like from I guess the mental like emotional side of like it's a different game, right? Like it's not as team, so it's like you're having more like individual conversations with them and like being able to like prepare and get like individuals ready versus like a whole team, like the locker room type speech. So how has kind of like the club world helped like shape and mold you?
absolutely. I definitely think that my whole club experience is the reason why I'm here.
Yeah,
You know, it's pretty common for male coaches in this sphere to come from different backgrounds, and I would say more male coaches than not did not do gymnastics. So
yeah,
it's kind of interesting, like bouncing those ideas and like backgrounds back and forth, and just hearing how people have gotten to where they're at. But for me in particular, doing the actual gymnastics is what kind of got me in the door with coaching, because at
yeah,
first I didn't really know how to communicate. I had to learn a bunch of different leadership styles. I didn't know how to do all these things. So I was really just coaching from experience, and I was when I was a gymnast, this is what I thought, this is what I did, this is what I felt. And as I'm starting to work with other athletes, it's okay, they don't think that way. They don't feel that way. And they're gonna do this completely different than me. So it allowed me to like use my own experience and what worked, what didn't work, and then going into the coaching world, like, oh, okay, not all the things that worked for me are going to work for
yeah,
them. So it really gave me like a pretty good baseline, like a good blueprint into where I need to go and like how I need to develop as a coach. And 100%, I think my weaknesses as an athlete have become my strengths as a coach. So I had a lot of
interesting,
different fears or communication issues, or just not willing to kind of push into different spheres. As an athlete, I really stuck to what I was comfortable with, what I was really good at. And that was definitely my Achilles heel at the time, and
yeah.
I have made like a really big conscious effort to try to develop that over time. And um, I feel like without that or without that club experience and like going through the whole process myself, I don't feel like I would have been able to relate to the multitude of different experiences that
Mm,
athletes can have, especially when they come to college. Everybody's going to learn something different. They're all going to be very comfortable in one setting and with one coaching style, and having to, when you're coaching college, you got to be able to adapt, and
right.
you got to be able to work with whatever it is that they're bringing in, whatever, if it's baggage or things that work really well in one light, So I think like the whole mental side and just like the experience of it as a gymnast really, really allowed me to get to where I'm at today. And I think that's definitely something that I will forever attribute to kind of where I've gotten.
Yeah. How is like your communication evolved, right? Because that's obviously um probably one of the top three like pillars into like having success. The ability to I always say like great communication is the ability to like simplify things, right? Like not make things complex. It's funny, I was literally just talking to somebody and I was like, when I very first like started getting in front of like teams is like ego Ryan like wanted to sound like super smart, right? So I was like I was like literally almost purposefully making things complex because I was like, oh, they're gonna think I'm so smart, and but like things weren't hitting as well as like it should have, versus like, oh no, it's like now literally it's like stick figure third grade like level of like here's the understanding of it. So for you, kind of how is that? Because you said like, or you mentioned that like communication was a little more of like the Achilles heel at the time. How has that evolved in like, or what did it look like then, and how has it evolved into be like becoming a strength now, and what does it look like for you now in terms of communication?
For sure. So when I first started coaching, I was mainly working with, 6 to 10 year olds and then the
Yeah.
occasional like high schooler. So just really at the time I was just dealing with kids and having to talk very simple and just motivate them to want to do things. And then, as you start to work down the line and now you're working with high schoolers, okay, well, you want to make sure that you're respected and that you have an authority, but you don't want to be too strong on that, so kind of got to work through that. And then when you come into college, everybody has different experiences and the maturity levels are so different, so I think at the time it's very easy to communicate with kids or kids from a very particular geographic area with similar experiences. So I didn't have to work on it as much, like as soon as I kind of had my style and how I did things and whatever it was, that's just what I stuck to. So then whenever there was an outlier, it was really hard for me to adapt.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
moving kind of down the line and like now into college, in the beginning, I felt very similar to you. Like I felt like, oh, all these people around me know exactly what they're doing. They're so educated, they're so experienced. Like I have to come across that way. And that is no longer how I work because
Yeah.
I've now realized that nobody knows exactly what they're doing or like what the best way to do things are. And as long as you're going about whatever it is and like whatever it is that you're trying to communicate, like if you are going with good intentions and from a good place, then you can try to navigate it, right? And I think like now the communication style to me is I don't always know the answer, but I'm going to help you find the answer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if, of course, like some things I'm like, okay, you got to do that, this, whatever. I'm going to try to explain that to you in the best, most respectful way possible. And if I don't know the answer, I'm going to let you know that I don't know the answer to everything. So like, let's learn together. You tell me what you think, how you feel. I'll tell you the same and let's collaborate. And that's the best part about college is these athletes, they want it. They want to work hard. They want to all achieve the same goal, the same mission, and go about it in a really good way. And if we can work together and not me just working for you, if we can work together and collaborate, that's the best type of communication. And I feel like as I've kind of evolved as a coach and evolved through my experience, it's I we have some international kids. We have
Yeah.
some kids that are only childs, some that are coming from a really big family, so everybody's like experiences and maturity levels and whatever it may be, everybody's unique in that type of way. So I'm how I am with athlete A over here is it's going to have to be different with athlete B on the other side, so I have to be very flexible and willing to kind of walk that line.
Yeah. It's interesting too, is like, I feel like in today's day and age, we'll just call it like a bullshit radar is like kids are like really good at, and I say kids, young adults, especially like at 18 to 22, like college age, like their bullshit radar is pretty good. And so is, I think the most important thing to your point is like, it is that authenticity. It is that like genuine. And if they like feel that, like I always tell people too, it's like, I could literally like if I take my personality and I could like say something and I've like completely made it up, I'm like, would you believe me? And they're like, probably so. I'm like, right, because it's like you feel that like from me. And so it's like a lot of times is even sometimes it's like not necessarily that you're lying, but it's like if you don't have the exact thing answer, so to speak, especially if it's in like the heat of the moment, but it feels real and all that. And it's like, what'd you tell them? I'm like, I have no idea, but like it worked. Like whatever you said, like worked, right? Like because it came from like a good place. And so I think that like, yeah, kids are like craving that like more and more and more now than like in the past.
Yeah, and I think even more on top of that, like they want as just as much control or input or power, whatever it may be. Like they want to be a part of it. They don't want to just
Yeah.
show up and be told what to do from start to finish. Like they want as much impact on the experience that we're able to give them. So I totally agree with you. Like the bullshit radar, that is so accurate. Like they can feel the confidence and the authenticity a mile away. And if you don't have that, like they'll pick up on it. And it's same, like if you yourself are like if you want to be the dictator, the authoritarian, and not give the space for them to make their experience their own experience,
Yeah.
they're not going to buy into that. And being able to kind of walk that, that's so important into determining success nowadays.
Yeah, and I think like to piggyback off what you said of like giving them like some ownership behind it is I think in any sport the greats are able to coach themselves in terms of like knowing what they need, right? Like, and I think that what makes the 1% the 1% is knowing what they need and not backing down, even if it's like a bad day, right? Like, even if I'm sore and I know I need to do like the 10 routines, like, right, like whatever the thing is, it's like it's still following through because I know that that's what I need, not, hey, I know I need 10 routines, but I'm sore. So I'm going to use this. So I only have to do two today and like make it easy for myself. And I think that's like a huge differentiator in like the good to great ones and giving them that ownership.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And especially when coming into college athletics, if we may have been recruiting an athlete for a couple of years, and to an extent, like we might have a good understanding of who they are and what they are bringing to the table. But
Right.
ultimately, I mean, and also there are some athletes where you meet them one day and then they're in the door the next, so
Yeah.
like there's some recruiting experiences where you just don't really know what you're going to get. And like I said, as soon as they walk in the door, it's a fresh start. So
Yeah.
whoever they might have been in high school or at home, it's going to be a completely different experience when they come to college. So ultimately, like, I don't know their gymnastics as well as they do. And
Right.
they
Yeah,
know
that's
their
good.
gymnastics better than anybody else. They know how their body feels better than anybody else. So ultimately, us as a coaching staff, our athletic trainers, whatever it is, like we're all just tools, we're support systems, and we're here to help attribute to the success. So if we're not communicating in that type of light, like I need to be able to support you. I can't do it for you. So
Yeah.
I need all of that in return. Like I need to know how you're feeling. And if there's some athletes that they have no idea how their gymnastics looks, how it
Yeah.
feels. They're just kind of doing it. And if that's the case, then I have to be there a little bit more and willing to support them and give them a little bit more direction. But there's going to be some athletes that come in the door and they know everything for the most part. Like they've done some of these skills for 10 years and they know how it looks, how it feels, and if it's a little off, they know exactly why. And with those athletes, I'm just there to give affirmation. I'm there to build their confidence and
Yeah.
continue them along that path, and that's okay. So I think that just kind of goes back to, again, that communication that we talked about, and it has to be super mutual and super respectful. And if you can do those things, then I can help this athlete along that path, and I can help the other athlete along a different path, but hopefully towards the same mission.
Yeah, and I like what you said too. Is like as you're coming into college, is like you're kind of this new person because like identity is like my jam. And so it's like I always tell people it's like if I summed everything up into like one phrase, it's you don't get what you want, you get who you are, right? So you can make the long list of goals, but like and you can write them all down, but like if you're not that person, it's probably not gonna pan out for you. You have to be able to, as you said, come in and be like, okay, I accomplished this here in club in high school. And but to get to here, it's like I have to be a completely new, different person, right? Like just going from level 5 to level 10. It's a whole different person, right? Going from 15 years old to 20 years old. You see the world differently, your perspectives on things. And so it's like I think helping people understand of using their imagination to create what that person looks like, right? It's like, okay, like we play the video game, you get to create the character, right? We played NCAA 20,000 or 2004, right? Whenever the last like version was out, right? And everybody's like 99 speed and the whole thing. It's like you have that ability kind of to do that like in your own life. Especially like as a competitor, as an athlete, is I just don't feel like enough people take that time to sit down and like really know what that person looks like. It's a little bit of they want the ownership, but at the same time they're just like just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. It's like I can't create who you are. Like you have to make that decision of like who you want to be. And I feel like that's like the moment that clicks for them, that's like the ultimate shift.
I completely agree. And when we're recruiting, we're looking for the people that have a growth mindset,
Yeah.
because ultimately, and this is the case for not even just recruits, but this is the case for athletes year to year. We want people that are going to come in and we want them to be true and authentic to who they are, but you're always pushing to be the next step up. You want to level up. And I experienced this a couple years ago. Like we had a really successful season and win a national championship. Okay, great. Mission accomplished. Let's go. But that's not it. There's another goal, right? And there's a whole another year. And when we come back that next year, sure, we can do all the same exact things, but everybody else, the rest of the competition, they're all going to be doing different things, and
Yeah.
there's people that are leaving and there's people that are coming in, and that's a completely different team. Even if it's just one or two different people, the whole identity has now changed. And we need people that have the growth mindset of wanting to continue to improve and aim for a better version of who they had been in the past, or
Yeah.
a better version of what they were doing on a week to week basis. And that's such an important factor and attribute that we're looking in recruits nowadays, because there are a ton of people that come in and they're like, just tell me what to do. I'll show up. I'll be there at that time and I'll leave when we're done. And then they leave. And that's okay. And not everybody's gonna be oh, what more can I do? Or like, how can I show up and be a better person today? There's going to be a whole wide spectrum, but I think ultimately what is one of the biggest factors of a successful team is when you have a bunch of like-minded individuals that
Yeah.
are pushing one another, pushing their teammate next to them, pushing their coach next to them. And if we're all pushing each other and wanting to get better every day, it's gonna bring us a lot further than just, okay, completed the assignment, check.
Yeah.
I did all my homework, check. Like if we're trying to get to that next level, we have to be wanting to put in the work for it.
Yeah, it makes me think of, I had a coach tell me, he's like, Ryan, you can't just check the box to break out of the box, right? And I feel like a lot of people, that's what they do. They check the box and like anticipations to be able to break barriers, right? Have breakthroughs and success. And to your point too, of I always tell people is this, I'm like, what do you think like is the scariest thing? And a lot of people think it's failure, and I'm like, actually is like, go have success, right? Like then all of a sudden now it's like, now people really are watching you, right? Now the judgment is completely different. And to your point too, is it's like, I think that's where like team identity, individual identity, when you do win a national title, in their brain, it's like, okay, I only have to repeat what I did before last year. And like you just said, is like, but everybody else now knows it's like, okay, we got to get there. So if you're still doing there, they're just going to like surpass you. And so I think that's the difference in like exceptional coaching and like good or great coaching, is the ability to not be the one hit wonder, right? Not win one title, but how do you win 4 out of 5, right? How do you win 7 out of 10? Because it's getting athletes, getting kids to understand that like everything is about growth. Like literally, like everything in life, the reason you exist is hopefully to grow. And it's like, you don't want to be 20 and act like a 5-year-old. You hopefully want to grow and mature towards like something. And I think that's like the silver bullet, like if you will, to like sustaining success over and over and over again.
I completely agree. And I think what can really deter a team from taking the next step up is where they're putting their resources and their time and uh, whatever it may be. I think there's an unlimited amount of opportunity in an entire calendar year. We can put all of our eggs into one basket. You can spread them out very thin. You can kind of go about it however you want in any type of way. But like speaking from my experience, win a national championship, come back the next year, it's like 100% what you were saying. Okay, everyone's going to try to top us, and we can go about doing the season how we did in the year prior, or we can try to level up. And where do we want to level up? Are we trying to just get tighter as a team? Or are we trying to improve our scores in specific areas? Like whatever it is, we got to decide where are we going to continue to grow, and who's gonna take the lead on X, Y, and Z. And it's 100% a team effort, and that's such a big difference between club gymnastics and college. And
Yeah.
it's there's a lot of different factors in this entire experience, and there's only so many days in a year. And
Yeah.
I wish that we could be the best team for recruiting. I wish we could be the best team in academics. I wish that we could be the best team culture, and we're going to strive to do every single one of those things. And if we do all of those things to the best of our ability, we're probably going to be the best team.
Yeah.
And if we're only having that win or lose mentality, like if it's we're trying to win at all costs, like some of those other categories are going to start to falter a little bit, and it's going to take a time, and it's going to take other people to try to fix that. So I think as long as we're all on the same page, and it goes back to the communication, if we're all on the same page with our goals and where are we putting our time and resources and energy towards, hopefully you start to level all the things at the same time. And if we're doing that, that's usually when you're going to start to see continued and sustained success.
Yeah. And I think too is I always say is I learned this from somebody is because I fell into the trap of I always ask them like, what's your greatest resource? And the most common answer is time. And I was like, I would actually put that at number 3. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, okay, I'm like, true or false? Just because you do gymnastics another year, you got better. And they're like, false. I'm like, okay, but you put the time in, right? And so the next level would be like energy, right? Like, okay, if I put the time in and give like energy towards it, that makes it a little bit better. But at the same time, to your point, is I think the most important piece of the puzzle is your attention, right? Like you only have so much attention to give, right? Like you only have so much bandwidth that you can actually do. And so it's like, if you're trying to build a business and then you start 6 others, like that's going to falter. And so there's a story of my coach, kind of one of his friends and mentors owns a $1 billion business. And when he very first got started, he's like, I want to make $10 million. So he started a company, made $1 million. She's like, okay, like I just need to, or maybe it was 20 million. That's what it was. I want to make $20 million. Started a company, made $1 million pretty quickly. It's like, okay. So then he's like, I just need to start another company and I'll make another $1 million. And so like, as he went on, he got to 3, he made 3 million. And then from that point, it was like, he started 10 businesses. And I was like, guess how much money he made? Everyone's like 10 million. I'm like, no, he made 3. Still only made $3 million. And so the idea was like, he eventually started like 20 and then came all the way back down. I was like, I just got to put my attention towards this. And so it's understanding and knowing, it's like what I call like the big levers, right? Like what are the biggest levers that you need to give your attention to? And so for a team, right? Like if in season, the biggest, somebody just defined this word for me too. So I'm stealing this from somebody. The definition of strategy is just prioritizing. So strategy is just like where you put like priorities. And so it's like in season, if my strategy, what's the biggest priority? What's the highest strategy is like, let's just say it's coaching, right? Then like, if there's like 17 recruiting trips, then like, I'm probably not going to take them because it's not a high priority, right? It doesn't mean you don't recruit, but it's like, I have to know, it's like, you can't be coaching and recruiting at the same time. Which lever do I pull? Which one is more important right now? And I think that when people understand and make that shift from like an attention standpoint, it becomes really, really, really powerful. And not just focus on like, because I think that's where like a lot of kids, athletes miss the boat is like, they just like, yeah, but like I show up to practice and I check the box. I'm like, doesn't mean anything. You're confusing just putting time in. Like there's other levers to pull on that side of the equation.
Absolutely. And I think kind of going with that, I feel like the most important thing that a staff can do really well is delegation.
Yeah.
And the power of delegation is really what's going to try to start to level things up. I was talking before of like, oh, we want to be good at recruiting and the gymnastics and the academics, whatever it is. We're going to start to level up because there's so many different levels of things, right? And there's only so many things that I can put my direct attention to and
100%.
prioritize. And sure, we have a staff of 4 people and of 4 coaches, and then you got some other support staff here and there. And there's only so many people to do all of these things. And I want my team to be super good with team culture, and I want them to be really good at gymnastics. And you said it really well. Like you got to put the attention to whatever it is that's most important. So it's a whole year round basis with the team. Right now we're the whole team's coming back to campus, and we got to start to find our identity and start to decide what our goals are. And once you lay the groundwork, and hopefully you got all the right people on board, right? With all the right mindsets and wanting to do all these things. I think the best team is a team that's led within, and
Yeah.
we were kind of talking about how athletes nowadays want a lot of control and say and power within their experience. And I love that. And if we have the right people on board that want to continue to push themselves, that's wonderful. I'm going to delegate a lot of my responsibilities and attention to the team, hopefully to the team. And if I don't want to be the leader on the team. I want to be one of the leaders on the team.
Right.
And if whatever it is that I think is best, hopefully the leaders on the team also embody that. And if so that way it's trickle down effect, and I by the end of season, hopefully in a perfect world, I could just show up to practice and I could watch it. And I'm like, oh, they're doing it all by themselves. Like they know
Right.
where to go, they know what to do. Their gymnastics is on point, and I'm just kind of there, And if we can get to that point by the end of season, I think job well done. And the only way that we can end up getting to that point is if we delegate it all from the beginning. Because there's only so many hours in a day, so many days in a year, and I can't do it all. So if I hopefully working well with the staff, working well with the team, then we're all going to get to that same point that we want to be at the end. And yeah, I think it's the best leadership is coming from within the team. And
Yeah.
I don't want it to come from just the staff. Like, of course, we're gonna do everything that we can ourselves to create the identity or give them power or instill whatever it is that it's going to be. But if they buy into it and the right leaders within the team, they hold people accountable and they begin to start to delegate things too. I mean, that's hopefully the end goal.
Yeah. And I think too is you kind of mentioned like clarity in terms of like everybody being on the same page and like tying that with like your attention is I think that where a lot of people, teams, organizations, whomever struggle is if you have sometimes the long list of goals becomes overwhelming and confusing versus like what's the ultimate mission, right? And what this does to attention, I believe, is it makes decisions really easy because like, okay, we have this in front of us. Does it help us accomplish mission? Yes or no, right? Like it may be it doesn't mean it's a bad idea, but if it's not helping you move from point A to point B, it's like again, you're pulling the wrong lever. You're giving your attention to like something else. And so it's like, again, I know it's like, it's an extreme and it's kind of a silly example, but like if in season, like our mission is to go to regionals, win nationals, like whatever the thing is, and there's a like, you're going to miss 5 days in the gym because you got to travel somewhere. It's like, may be important, but like which lever do we need to pull? And like I think that ultimately when I have that singular mission of like, okay, we want to win a national title. Okay, like does this me being here help us more or being away, like depending on, and then I can make decisions quicker because I think the best teams are just like decisions are just made really fast. The best leaders, it's like they're just really clear about like, okay, yeah, that's a really great idea, but it doesn't like it's like way down on the totem pole and like how much leverage that gives us into having success.
Totally. And ultimately, like a lot of times those ideas or some of those levers could be beneficial,
Yeah, totally.
yeah. And like some, it may be more important to somebody else on the team. Um, but in a leadership position or whatever, like you said, don't have the time. It's not going to be as beneficial as pulling a different lever. And I think that's where it goes back to the delegation,
Yeah,
and let somebody else be empowered. Let somebody else attribute to the team. Let somebody else pull that lever that hasn't pulled one.
right.
And if I want everybody on the team to be a part of the team.
Yeah,
We don't want people that are just going to show up, be told what to do and leave, like we said before, So if the leadership is instilled properly and people have a say and there's a good system to how it works, and if they're like, hey, let's do this, and I'm like, oh, okay, you guys can do that. Let's go empower somebody to do that. Like I hear you. I think that's a great idea, and let's delegate it. Like I want everybody on the team to have a say. I want everybody to be a part of the experience, and if that's important to you, let's find some time to do it. And work together with those athletes or with whoever that if they have power over it, or if they have an ability to do that with you, run with it.
Yeah.
And if that's going to make you guys better, like I said before, they know themselves better than I do, and it's their experience. So if that's what's going to work, then go for it.
Yeah. What do you feel like, slightly shifting gears, is like, I just, again, kind of going back to like identity, is I like, as people, I think that we're like emotional things, emotional creatures, so to speak. Is I firmly believe like we make decisions based off of our emotions and like justify them with logic. And so it's like obviously a large part in improving anyone's performance, right? Whether it be an athlete or just a human being in general, is understanding like the emotional hurdles that we overcome. And so, like, what's been the last few years, like as a college coach, what do you think are the biggest emotional hurdles that most of the athletes are like working to overcome?
I think a really big thing that has played a factor, like even up until now, is COVID and
Mm,
a lot of athletes missing out on experiences. And as things have started to evolve, and especially with social media and NIL, people people want to be involved. Like a lot of people want to be the face, or they want the attention. They want the opportunity, So I think with all those things, like there's only so much to go around for it. So trying to find that balance of who gets the opportunity, who gets the spotlight, whatever it is, that's been a pretty big hurdle. And um some people, that if they don't want it, that is what it is, and
yeah.
it gives opportunity for others. And um I think people come into college and come into college athletics with a lot of preconceived ideas, or
Yeah.
whatever it is of what the experience may be. And as soon as they get here, it's something different. And that reality is sometimes hard for people to get over. So I think that's kind of been a challenge, because social media and people talk the big talk, and it's like, oh, this is you're gonna do this and it's gonna be so great, and whatever it is, right? And I think that's a big hurdle, is trying to overcome that, and it's similar with recruiting, and you're like, oh, I know this person that went to school there, or I saw on TV this or whatever, and everybody experiences things differently,
Yeah.
and you and I, we could go to a movie and you could sit there and love it, and I could sit there and hate it. And
Totally.
it's very much the same with college athletics and going to college and going through the recruiting process. You have to do it yourself, and you have to be open-minded to whatever it is. And uh if you're not, it's going to be a lot harder to deal with some of the realities of when it's different.
Yeah. I love the concept of what you touched on with like, I think they have like this, in your words, preconceived notion. They have this mental image of like what college is going to be like, because, and it never fails. Like every time I stand in front of a team, like for the first time, I'm like, what's the number one emotion you feel on a day-to-day basis? And like without hesitation, it's stress, worry, overwhelmed, anxiety, either one, four, or like all of those, right? And I go, okay, fill in this blank. Before you came to college, you were told college is going to be, and they're like, the time of my life. And I was like, and 99% of the time you're overwhelmed. So there's a disconnect, right? Like, and I think it's helping as early as you can, whether it be for you guys, it'd be in the recruiting process, or like somebody like in my shoes, it would be like their freshman year, as early as like you can start having those conversations of like, okay, what do you perceive this is going to be like? Because like, let me help you paint the picture of like how this actually goes down. Because again, they only see what they see on social media. And like, of course, like, I mean, if you're a program, you're posting the good things too, right? It's this just what it is. You're not probably going to post all the bad routines, or the bad days in practice, or the stressful moments, or that you have to go to study hall for 10 hours your freshman year, like whatever it is, right?
Right.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like I think helping them really understand that, like, I think it's okay to say it's like, hey, you're going to be stressed now. Like that, like we're gonna help you manage this, because like it's gonna happen. And it's better to kind of like understand and know that feeling overwhelmed is normal. You're not gonna be some outlier. You're not the of 30,000 kids at Nebraska. You're not this one person that's overwhelmed on campus, right? And so
Mhm.
I love that, like being able to manage those emotions because again, it's like you almost been lied to because everyone's like, man, college is the best time of your life. And then you get there and you're just like, what the fuck? This is correct. This is awful.
Yeah, and comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
I've coached at pretty much all levels of college athletics now. I started in D3, went to a D2 newly D1 school, and then now in the Big Ten, So I've seen kind of all the different things, and I've been to almost every campus in the country, So
Yeah.
I've seen the different opportunities, and ultimately, like, you can go through your whole recruiting process and you hear all these things about whatever school, but the most important thing is where it is that you could see yourself being happy.
Yeah.
I think like the money is great, the fame is great, like the resources, all the shiny objects, like it's great. But I know a lot of people that go through that and they get all of these things and they're miserable. And I
Yeah.
know a lot of people that went to a D3 school and they didn't have anything, no resources. They were paying their own way there and they had the time of their life, and it's really who are you surrounding yourself with and what is that expectation that you're going into college with or whatever opportunity it may be, and it's at the end of the day, it's whatever it is that you make it out to be. And if you go in with being open-minded and wanting to have a good experience, and if you're trying to do all the things that you can to give yourself the best shot at it, it's probably going to work out a lot better. And if you're going into it with this idea of, oh, like I already put all the work in and now I just get to experience
Yeah.
the life, and the life is good, but you have to make it that. And
Yeah.
it's only up to you. Like you can have all the resources at your disposal and you can surround yourself with really good people, but you have to do just as much work for it because it's your life, it's your experience. And if you're gonna maximize that, and I would hope to think that when you come to Nebraska, like we have all the resources and the really good people around you, and we're setting you up to be super successful, and that's the case in a lot of places, and that's why you go through the recruiting process, and that's why you go and experience all these things to see what's at your disposal. But
Yeah.
you can't just go there and experience it. Like you have to attribute to it and you have to put all the work in as well.
Yeah. Tony Robbins' quote is like, in most cases, is like, you don't lack resources, you lack resourcefulness. And I think that that's most of the people. It's like, if you're coming to like, if you have a team of, 5 athletes that come to you and it's just like, this is why we're not winning. And it's like, the training room and this, it's like you're literally just being a victim because like people have done more with less. Like it just is, right? Like, and so it's like, I think way too many get people caught up in that kind of like victim mentality of like, well, like if I had blah, if I had blah. And it's like, it's funny, actually, I was literally watching for like the seventh time last night, the Redeem Team. And it makes me think of is a very short clip, and LeBron started speaking in front of the team, and he goes, all of us in this room had once said, if I played with Kobe, if I played with Chris Paul, if I did this, if I had them on my team, I would be unstoppable. And he was like, and here we are. We're all on the same team. And he goes, so what the fuck is our excuse now? Like how like we all said it in some form or fashion. And so it's like I think that like a lot of people think that it's like the next thing versus like 5 years ago you would have begged for what you have now in terms of like facilities, resources, and all the things. It's just like you're probably just too lazy to actually use them.
I completely agree. Yeah, it's definitely from my experience, like it's really opened my eyes to that. I came from opportunities where we didn't have any resources at all. We didn't have any shiny objects, and we had to just work with it. And it just goes back to what I was saying before. Like surrounding yourself with the right people is what is so important, and that's always my biggest thing that I tell recruits. And because sure, like I want the best recruit, like
Yeah,
I want to bring on the most talented kid, but if they don't want to be a part of the experience, I'm not gonna bend over backwards to
totally.
get them to come to a place that they don't want to be. And I think that's where you end up seeing a lot of kids enter the portal. And that's where you see a lot of people going through their college experience and not liking it because they decided to go down a path for the wrong reasons. And I think it's it just if you see a team that ends up having a lot of turnover or a lot of culture issues, I think a lot of that comes back to like how did that team get together in the first place? Like where whatever went wrong, sure it might have went wrong during season or at some point, but it was from the beginning, you know, and
Yeah.
like again, I want the best kids and I want the best kids that also want to come here, you
Yeah.
know, and ultimately, you know, there's always going to be bigger and better. There's always going to be some place that's like, oh, they
Always.
can pay me more or whatever it is.
Always.
But if you feel like you could be at home there, or if you like the coaches, if you like the athletes, like that's your daily. You
Yeah.
know, you're gonna get accustomed to wherever it is you're living. You're gonna get accustomed to wherever it is that you're training, you know, and that's gonna become your normal and you're not even gonna think twice about it. But you're always gonna think every single day about, okay, who am I gonna go see? Who am I gonna hang out with? Who am I gonna be working with? Like that's what is so important. And that should be the emphasis of recruiting.
Yeah, and I think tying a couple of those pieces, like social media, I label a lot of that. It's like everybody wants the status and the fame, so to speak. Um, but they can only see it, and so or tying it to a portal too is like I feel like a large reason that a lot of people, it's not just gymnasts, but like a lot of athletes in general are entering the portal is they really crave, and I'll give you an example, true story. They really crave that 24-hour status, fame. Hey, I went against the grain of what everyone thought I was going to do. So it's like I got this massive attention and like I got all this like status and fame and notoriety for like 24, 40 hours, maybe a week, right? But then like that falls to the bottom of the feed, right? And so it's like I'll never forget is there was an athlete and had narrowed it down to two schools. And like basically like everyone knew what school this person was going to choose, right? And this person was like, I think I'm going to just choose the other one just to like basically like prove people wrong. I was like, so you literally want to be miserable, so to speak, for 4 years so that you can post a picture going against of what everyone else thought. And I was like, that's literally the dumbest thing like I've ever heard. And so obviously they made the original decision, but like they were seriously contemplating. Like that was a thing. Like they were literally gonna do it so they could post something that in a week would be gone for the
Yeah, and
status and the fame.
yeah, I mean it's what we were talking about before, you know, like some of the biggest hurdles of what college athletics, like the whole landscape over just the last handful of years is kind of going through is people want that attention and they crave the notoriety or the fame or the money, whatever it is, you know, and like that's great for the short term and you're sure you might be happy and like you love this attention and people are all over it, but yeah, ultimately it does fall down to the bottom of the feed and you got your whole life to live, you know,
Yeah.
and when you're signing up for college or whatever it is, right? When you're signing up for that big of a commitment, that's your life and
Yeah.
that's hopefully if it's the right situation, it's not just 4 years. You know, you're
Yeah.
walking out of it with the resources and the connections and the experiences to set you up for success after. And then if you ever wanted to go back and support or maybe send your kids there someday, like you had a good enough experience and you felt like it was a good enough situation to where you're okay with that and you're proud to be affiliated, you know, and it's you know, I was saying that before of the issue is the short term
Yeah.
and all of those things. And I think, you know, sometimes you might end up losing out on the best kid, you know, and that is okay. If what instead what you're getting is somebody that wants to attribute to the same goal and mission of to where you're going to get because you're probably going to end up getting more out of that kid in performance and academics or whatever it is if they are wanting to go into the same path that you're trying to lay for them.
Yeah. And I think in making those decisions, tying it back to kind of like identity, it's like understanding of like, can I get a clear image of like who it is that I want to become and like making decisions like, okay, like are they going to help me? Do I feel like they're going to help me become that version of myself? Are they going to be the ones to hold me accountable, right? Are they going to give me the freedom to imagine and create that character as like I want it? Because to when we talked about earlier of like being told what to do is actually my coach like told me this is because I was basically like I was stuck in a rut and I was like, just tell me what to do. Like, Josh, just tell me what to do. And he was like, Ryan, he goes, fill in the blank. And he goes, you're a human. And I go, being. And he goes, exactly. You're a human being. You're not a human doing. So he goes, the issue is like, even if I told you what to do, you wouldn't do it because you're not that person yet. So it's literally irrelevant. And he was like, until you become that version of you, until you become that person, he's like, you're literally asking the wrong question. And he's like, there's three worlds that it's broken down into. There's being, there's thinking, and there's doing. You must become, you will start thinking differently, and then you will start behaving, doing things differently. And so like that was a big aha moment for me is like, and I think that that's where a lot of athletes are like, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. I'm like, I mean, I can tell you, but like, it's not going to change. You're not going to do it, right? Like, because you need to get really clear on like, do the inner work of like, what version of you must walk through that door? What version of you must like show up every single day? Like, how does that person walk, talk, eat, sleep, dress, like communicate everything? Get really, really, really clear on that. Like, so clear, like, you should like cry, like, because you're just like, I don't want to say hard on yourself, but like you literally go that deep, like internally to like really understand like who you are and like who it is that you want to become.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, and I think I never want to live in the future, nor do I want to live in the past. I want to be in the present, but I want to make sure that my present actions are for where I'm going, and when it comes to recruiting or talking with the team and where we're at today is where we're at today. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be where we're at today next year. So
Yeah.
but we can't perform at next year's level today. So what are we
Right.
going to do what steps are we going to take? Who are we going to bring on that's going to get us to that point? And it kind of goes back to the shiny things, taking a team for the short term, making decisions for like short term satisfaction or happiness. Like, sure, great, that's good for right now, but where are we going to be in a year? And
Yeah.
I when it comes to and this is such a big piece for recruiting for me and my staff, and like where are we going? So if we're bringing out some kids and we're trying to decide like who we want to bring into our program, like who's going to help us get to where we would like to go. And when like as soon as you bring a kid out on campus and you're doing the whole recruiting process, like what you see is what's happening right now, but hopefully a year from now it's going to look different, and
Right.
hopefully you're continuing the cycle of like getting better every single day and trying to reach to the new height. And if if you're selling what it is that is today, you're probably going to be the exact same next year. You're probably going to
Right.
be the same at the end of season, and if you're trying to always having that growth mindset and pushing everybody to become better versions of themselves, like that, we got to go into every single day with, okay, where are we going
Yeah.
and how are we getting there? Who's driving the boat? What path are we taking?
Yeah, I think tying it like to clarity too and conversations with a lot of coaches is I think not that they do a bad job, but I think that like one of like the like superpowers of mine, like if you will, is helping them paint that cathedral really, really, really clear every single day so that because it's like they have this mental image of like what the cathedral looks like, right? Like when it's fully built, when we're done building it, yeah, we got to lay all the bricks, right? We got to pour the foundation. We got to do all the things. It's not here today, but I know exactly what it looks like. Because there's like a story that ties to it is I was reading the other day and it was like it was a salesperson and it's like they had a territory and they made like after I don't know I think it's like $5,000 a month, right? And so in their head they were a $5,000 a month salesman, and so they shifted them into like all different territories that were like boom and should have made way more money, only made $5,000. Territories that absolutely suck, like no reason that they should have made that money, still made $5,000. And just everywhere they put them is like they always made $5,000 because they're in their brain, the mental image. They're just like I'm a 5,000. It's their identity, right? It's how they define themselves. And so it's like I think like constantly getting really, really, really clear on like it's beyond like, hey, we want to win a national title, right? Like it's like vividly, like how do I see it so that that becomes part of like who I am, because then I become that person. I start to show up as that person every single day.
Totally. And when you start to bring on new people into that goal, that mission, whatever it is, it's gonna continue to evolve, you
Yeah.
know, and it might be super clear today, and then a month from now, hopefully I'm a better version of who I was a month prior. And okay, now I have more skills or resources or better people. And okay, now got to start to repaint it a little, you know, it's a continuous cycle. Like you might think that it's super, super easy and like, all right, this is what we're gonna do and how we're gonna get there. And but hopefully if you're doing it all properly and you're going down the path right, you're going to have to continue to try to make it even better, you know, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you're going to
Yeah.
continue to fine tune it. And um, yeah,
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people, it's like, if you wrote out the entire like year's worth of assignments, it's like you wouldn't write them in Sharpie, right? Like you'd write it in pencil, because like after like the third week, you'd be like, okay, like that was an easy day. Like we got to go hard today, like or whatever it is, right? Like you're gonna kind of like shuffle the how, so to speak. And I think that's a big hurdle, like getting athletes to understand is I think they obsess over the how too much. I'm like, you don't care about the how. I'm like, true or false, if you win a national title with a 195, do you care? And they're like, no. I was like, so stop freaking out, right? Like, I get that that's like a stupid extreme example, but at the same time, it's like if you're constantly, it's like 199, 199, 199, like, and that's all you like, you're obsessing over it. It's like you're not going to be able to perform, because like you're just like freaking out 24/7 in your brain about a number, a tangible score, versus knowing what your performance should look like.
totally. Yeah. I mean, the why is going to bring you so much further, you know,
Yeah.
and we, like my past season at Lindenwood, we were cut a month before season and the how became so not important anymore because we were like, I mean, at the end of the day, we could all just walk out the door tomorrow. Like we don't have
Literally.
to go through the season. Like our whole team could have transferred. They had a whole month to transfer before season if they wanted. You know, so the how became completely irrelevant. And we had to redefine what the why was going to be. Like why are we all going to show up every day when there is no future? Why are we going to put all of this in? Like why are we going to hold one another accountable? And that's we I mean we had to completely recreate the blueprint of
Yeah.
what the how was going to be because the why completely
It
changed.
changed. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I love it. I love it. All right. Last question. If you were in a stadium with 100,000 people and you could only leave them with one message, what would your message be?
Oh man. I think my one message would just be to stay true and authentic to who you are and be confident with that
Yeah.
because there's always so many different ideas of who we can be and how we should be doing things, right? But however I'm going to do it and who I want to be and where I want to go is unique to me. You
Yeah.
know, and I like to think that I have really good morals and values and intentions, and I have continuously redefined those as I've gotten older and gone through more experiences. And I think that my foundation is very firm and coming from a really good place.
Yeah.
So when I go and set out to do my actions, I have to be confident in that. And I think I have to be very confident in who I am as a person and where I'm going. And that's going to lead me to wherever it is that I'm setting out to go. And for everybody out there, being confident in yourself is not always easy. And sometimes you're going to have to fake it. And it gets easier over time, you know. And I think if you show up every single day, you show up with confidence and you try to work hard, you do all those things to the best of your ability, you're going to go so much further than asking for permission or asking
Right.
for um the if whatever it is that you're doing is right, because there is no right way, there is no
Yeah.
right path, you know. And it's you're going to set out on your own journey and be confident in that, and you're going to go the place that you want to go.
Yeah. And I think it's that confidence is, again, everyone thinks that their biggest fear is fear of failure. I think their biggest actual fear is fear. I'm kind of like, going back on myself because I said success earlier, but like I think their actual fear is fear of judgment. And so they're like, oh, like, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, if you were, if you, let's just use gymnastics. If you were in here doing gymnastics and no one was in here and it was just you and you fell off, would you care? And they're like, probably not. I'm like, exactly. The only reason you care is because you're in the arena with 10,000 people and you're like, oh, what are they going to say? Oh, that was on video. What are my coaches thinking? What are my, what are my teammates thinking? And so to show up like you said, it can be difficult. And so I think of like knowing that it is the fear of the judgment. And so it's like when you can overcome that. And a quote I heard, and this is like a little like ruthless, is I heard somebody say, and I actually like open up like even at camps, like with all the little kids, because they're just like, oh my God, he's crazy. But I'm like, hey, guess what? Is anybody in this room going to be at my funeral? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay. So if you're not going to be there at the end, I don't care what you think about me right now. And so that's kind of like, I heard that and it's kind of just like freed me, so to speak, of just like, if you're not going to be there at the end, I really don't care what you think about now. And so, like you said, it's just constantly like showing up as like who you actually are.
And I think more often than not, generally speaking, usually the only time that you do go back and think about specific people or experiences that did not go well or were not successful, usually it's because the intention or like the foundation behind it was not right.
Right.
And people that aren't coming from a good place, like if things don't go well, you're going to remember that.
Right.
But if all the best teams and like the best athletes in the world, they can't be successful every time. And
Yeah.
nobody thinks twice the next day after those athletes fail, because that's all a part of the experience. And if you can embrace those, like embrace the lows, it makes the highs even so much better. And you gotta go through both. So if you're showing up with confidence every day and pursuing your mission from a good place, it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might be in front of a spectacle of a lot of people, but that's respected, and most people respect that and they watch it, and it's a part of life. It's a part of sports, and it is what it is, and if you can manage that and like be okay with it, whenever it is, when your time does come, because it always does, if you're persistent and you're confident with it, your time will come of success or recognition, and you'll feel like you earned that because you went through the trials and tribulations that it took to get you there.
Yeah, and I'll say this as we kind of close it out too is I was re-listening to David Goggins on Joe Rogan's thing, and like you're talking about like going through failures, and he talked about how he's every time that like where everyone would use the word failure, he just puts attempt in there. And I was like, oh, that's actually like pretty powerful and not like super savagey of like, hey, like somebody be like, no, hey, you failed. And it's like, no, like I just attempted. Right. And so it's like all these times it was like, I just attempted this. So even in the practice room of just like, hey, like it's okay to fail right now versus like, hey, like you're just attempting things. You're just attempting things. And so I thought that was like really powerful of like just reframing the same thing to be able to like make a shift in your brain.
Yeah. And I would always much rather prefer to get to the end, whenever the end is. I'd much rather get there and have a whole life of attempts
Yeah.
and the experiences that come along with the attempts than get to the end and feel like, oh, I wish I tried, or I wish I would have given an attempt.
Yeah. You're gonna have more regrets not shooting the shot than you are shooting the shot and missing. 100%. I wholeheartedly
Absolutely.
love that. Yeah. Well, cool, man. This has been awesome. I appreciate you jumping on. I appreciate like sharing about like your journey and just like how it's evolved and just everything from communication and leadership to, emotional awareness. So yeah, dude, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for your time. This has been a lot of fun and hope to do it again with you sometime.
Hell yeah, dude. Until next time, everybody. Peace.